Hi everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the official 11-day countdown for the global launch event of the Inside Track, which I'm very excited to be sharing with the world. Now, the purpose of this countdown, if you remember, is to really change your life and give you some insight into how to handle adversity or any challenge that's going on in your life right now, whether you buy the book or whether you don't. And so yesterday we discussed a lot about different aspects of chapter 1, and thank you for your comments and feedback. I'm here to interact. And one of the things that was asked was, how am I using some of these tools, or how did I use it inside? Well, one of the questions was about identity. If you recall, identity is the strongest unconscious driver of our behavior. If you're a smoker who's quit versus a non-smoker, you have a different sense of self in relation to that habit, which will lead usually to a different outcome. If you're a millionaire in training versus somebody who's broke, you've got two different mindsets based upon that identity. Now, how did I use that identity in prison? Very simple. Not for 1 second did I go in there with the identity of a prisoner. That would have put me on a very different path emotionally, mentally, and my behavior would have been affected as a result. Instead, I made the conscious choice before I went in to go in as a secret agent of positive change. And that led to an entirely different adventure, which helped really make an impact that's still being felt today. I'm very grateful and I'm very blessed to be able to say. In fact, it was funny because on my first night, when I'm sitting in the processing part and I get called in for the medical, for the first night medical that you have to go through, the doctor is sitting across the table from me and he leans forward. He says, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Are you undercover?" And I said, "No, why?" He said, "Well, I've never seen somebody so happy on their first ever day in prison." And I sat and I thought about it, and I thought, well, actually, yeah, I kind of am undercover, as a secret agent of change. And I shared that with him, and luckily he didn't prescribe me any crazy pills. But it just reinforces the fact that the identities that we carry are usually unconscious. So to be able to specifically choose them will have an impact. Are you an employee who hates their job, or are you an entrepreneur in waiting? They are conscious choices we can make. So that was from yesterday, and if you haven't seen yesterday's video, please go watch it. There was a load more really good stuff in there. And if you're watching this video on YouTube or on Instagram or any of the other social feeds, please go click the event page on Facebook, because that's where we're adding the bonus content, the free gifts, and all of the other things that we're stacking that through. Feel free to comment. As you can see, I'm answering backwards and forwards. I'm going to be fully engaged with you over the next 10 days to make this experience, this countdown, something that can really add value and impact you for in a real positive way. So today's day 2. That means we're talking about chapter 2 in the book. And one of the things I promised I'd mention is, have you ever had a time where you really wanted to help somebody, either a close friend or even a family member who was going through a difficult time, or they were engaged in a behavior or a destructive habit that was really taking them in the wrong direction, and you really wanted to help? And you got to a point where you felt like you were banging your head against a wall, and you didn't know whether it was time to stay or time to leave and allow them to carry on and learn the lessons they need to learn, or you'd feel guilty about having it as an obligation to assist. Ever been in that situation? Well, that certainly happened to me after a couple of weeks of being inside, when my cellmate, who was he was a big guy but very depressed, as many people were. And as a secret agent of positive change, I was there to try to help. And I did some great work with him, but it got to a point where he was more committed to his victim story than really wanting to make the difference to change. And it got almost violent to a point where he was threatened to smash the television into my face if I didn't toe the line and fit his pictures. So at that point, I was faced with the choice. Do I continue to help and work through that? Or is it time to leave and go get another cellmate who I can probably help more? How do you make that choice? Well, I'll give you some pointers. One is that if you do try to help somebody, make sure first that you are the invitation and the example. You are not the demand or the imposition. In other words, if you're telling somebody that they're drinking heavily and it's probably not serving them, and you're worried about them, make sure that you're not doing a bottle of Jack Daniels a night. You have to be the example. Also, if you try to impose, saying to somebody, this is what you should be doing, expect resistance, because nobody likes to be told what to do, because it triggers the fear that where they are now isn't enough. So what happens is they disown the awareness. And if there's one thing I've learned in personal growth, it's the cost of awareness is responsibility. And that's why most people don't own the awareness. They actually avoid, because they want to avoid the responsibility that would then impose on them. So, you know, you can't be a prophet in your own land is another one which I tend to use a lot. Yeah, so if you are trying to help your brother, your sister, your friends, they're not going to listen to you because a lot of the time you don't carry a sense of credibility because, again, you can't be a prophet in your own land. But if you are the invitation by being the example, that's a different matter. And then if they don't follow through, then they, you know, sometimes it's hard to say or it's hard to take, but sometimes people have to bang their head on the pavement before they, you know, realize it's time to tie their shoelaces, and they're on their own path. What do you do in that situation? You send them love. Yeah, you do the best you can and you send them love. There's only very rare instances where I would do what's called a forced intervention. Yeah, if you've got, you know, somebody you care about and they're in a burning building and they don't want to leave, occasionally it's time to kick the door in, knock them out, put them over your shoulder and drag them out. But if that happens, sometimes, you know, the compulsion is for them to run right back because it wasn't their choice. That's a fine line. But the big guidepost is be the invitation and the example, not the imposition, if you want to create a real difference. Also, one of the aspects that I mentioned yesterday I'd share with you is the topic of sex energy transmutation. Taken from Napoleon Hill's classic Think and Grow Rich, chapter 11. How do you channel the energy, the drive, the force that comes with the sex hormones that, you know, are responsible for a huge amount of impetus and drive that overrides logic and does all sorts of human impetus? How do you channel that into something more productive when you can't express it with a partner, you know, where 1 + 1 is 11? Well, I was going to explain some of that, but guess what? As the universe delivers, I saw a video yesterday just posted on a channel from somebody who I've got a tremendous amount of respect for and somebody whose work I followed. I actually mentioned him in the Inside Track, and that's Dr. Joe Dispenza. And one of my students who I actually sent to Joe Dispenza, a guy called Oliver from South Africa, who, an amazing guy, great kid, asks this very question in the seminar, and Joe's just posted it on his channel. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to post that actual video into the event page so you can actually go and see what answer Joe Dispenza gives. And I'll be honest, I couldn't have put it better myself. You know, Joe's a master at being able to channel through and use the emotions out of the lower 3 energy centers and put them into a higher purpose. But his answer is highly insightful. Yeah, and the term a sex hangover is something that, you know, put a smile on my face. All will be revealed if you watch that short video, and I'll post it in the event page. So what else do I talk about in chapter 2 of the Inside Track? One of the things I was facing at the time was the loss of everything. I pretty much lost my business. You know, I went from 53 staff to less than 5 staff in a matter of 3 weeks. Everything I'd been building up from turning over 6 figures a month to virtually 0, almost bankrupt because of legal costs. Now, I faced losing my home. I faced losing everything that I got, my reputation, because people didn't know why I'd gone in. It was only when I came out and people saw how I showed up and saw the bullshit and behind what was actually led to the allegations that were, you know, never made it to court, that they started to appreciate and understand, you know, my side of the story, as it were, which I cover in the book. So, being able to be faced with everything that you lose, how do you deal with that? Well, in chapter 2, I cover it, and part of that I have to give credit to one of my mentors, somebody you may have heard of, a character created by the world-renowned Mr. George Lucas, and that is Yoda. Yes, Yoda has a lot of wisdom to give, as you probably know, for those Star Wars fans amongst us. Yoda said a quote, and it's on my wall, and it said, "Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose." Now that sounds, you know, easy. Practice is difficult. And what came to my mind is that every relationship that you have in your life will at some point end. Now that awareness requires a level of emotional maturity in order to accept, but it's a fact. I don't care if that's a relationship with your kids, your soulmate, your house, your business, your car, or your own body. At some point, that relationship will end. So if we know that in advance, what does that do for codependency, for neediness? Because the way I saw it in my mind was every relationship you have is like a wall, yeah, around you that you're leaning on. And the stronger you need that, the more you're leaning on it. And what happens when you lean really heavily against a wall and that wall falls over? You crash. Being able to appreciate the relationships in your life, knowing at some point, yeah, everything in the physical world means that its destination is non-physical. that every relationship is temporary by design in the physical world. So, if we know that in advance, we can avoid the sense of neediness. We can appreciate our parents while they're alive, as I did, and then, of course, you're going to mourn and miss them when they go. But if you think you need them forever, I got news for you. That's not going to happen. So, how do you structure that when faced with everything that you're currently losing at once, as I was a year ago when I was inside? Well, I talk about the thought processes, etc., in chapter 2 on how to do that, but that is the starting awareness. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose, and you'll actually become empowered rather than disempowered. Okay. One of the other things I talk about in chapter 2 is a subject I debated on whether to include in the book, but the book is the 11 actual letters that I wrote to my high-level coaching clients. I didn't want to edit them. So apart from spelling mistakes, because I wrote everything by hand. And so I decided to keep it in. But it's a concept I rarely talk to the public about. This is for my more advanced students. And that is the concept of egregores. And I'm not going to go into this now. You want to have to, if you really want to go have a look on Wikipedia, but I go into detail in the book. But what if there was a concept that allowed you to understand the energetic dynamics around conflict, around what's really going on when you get sucked into sleeping awake and an argument appears out of nowhere? How do you neutralize that or recognize it for what it is and therefore avoid the trap of falling into it? So I include all that in chapter 2. So anyway, just as a reminder, please mark your calendars. August the 1st is when we go live on Amazon. And for all of my friends over in the US, we'll be posting the Amazon.com link for where you'll be able to get it for the cheapest amount on that day. And also for my friends here in the UK and Europe, Amazon.co.uk will be posting those links, so neither of you have to pay excess shipping to bring it from the other country. There's also going to be a ton of other free stuff I'm giving away. If you buy the book on August 1st, I'm going to give you free of charge the Kindle, the ebook, and the audio book that, again, is already be recorded. So those of you that are more into listening, then no problem. I've got you back. We've got it covered. Other than that, we're going to go into day 3 tomorrow. Now, day 3, in chapter 3 of the book, I cover what life inside Britain's toughest jail is really like. Because I'll be honest, by the time I'd sent my second letter out, I had people saying, it sounds like you're having too much fun. Trust me, it wasn't all smiles. In the next update, I'm going to cover some of the times that I was at my lowest, because that's when you're really tested. It's all right being smiley when you're kicking back and the sun's out and everything's great, but when you're at your lowest point, the times I cried, the times I thought there was no way back, and I really had to pull up myself from the deepest part of myself to be able to get over the massive negativity that was so pervasive in a place like Pentonville. So I'm going to cover that. I'm also going to cover what it really takes to understand the mindset of somebody else in there who has an agenda that means that you're a target. In other words, the violence. And blood on the floor was a daily occurrence. Hospitalizations weekly. Again, murder. I just missed an attempted murder by minutes after being in for 2 weeks. I cover that in volume 3 of the Inside Track. So please stay tuned tomorrow. I hope this is adding some value. I hope you're getting excited. Please comment. I'm going to reply. If you haven't signed up for the event page, please go do it. petersage.com/VIP book launch, and come and join us there. I'll see you guys tomorrow on day 3 of the countdown, where we will only have, wait for it, 9 days to go. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow.